Well, this is the former CEO of United Airlines, especially for the people like myself from Chicago in here. That's a pretty big deal across the country, don't get me wrong, but Chicago's a united city. And so I was pretty excited to be able to host Oscar here today and be able to share his wisdom with all you here. And we're so excited to be able to learn from his lessons in leadership, managing boards, and just how we can be able to continue to inspire building a better society together. And so it gives me great pleasure and privilege to be able to introduce Oscar Munoz to the crowd today, and we're so excited to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Glad to see everybody. Glad you could make it. This is a special thing for all of us. As Fidel said, why do people show up to different things for different reasons? And we all have stories. And as another immigrant, it's amazing the parallels, and you guys teach a lot of kids that are minorities, and the background that a lot of them share is this one of, general, hardship at the start, but somehow, some way, there's a human being in their circle that stopped and gave a shit about that human being, and that's who you guys are. And when I heard you were coming, and Michael and I were talking, it's like, you got to have me there. Can I squeeze in somehow? I'm just coming from Europe, so I'm on a 9-hour time difference. I am, and Fidel's going to join me as well. We're going to come to the reception tonight, so there'll be lots of questions that you'll have and all that. I want to spend my time doing a couple things. Giving you a quick sense of all that I've done professionally, which is an important part to give skills and experiences, but it's also important to know that all those things, all those accolades, all the success we've had in that space is what I do. It is not who I am, as the old saying goes. So I was born a poor brown kid in northern Mexico to a single mother. I never knew my father. My grandmother took care of me for the first 8 years of my life. Mama Josefina is her name. My mom left with her older brother, came to the United States here to LA while she got all herself straightened up. And so for 8 years, I roamed the countryside. My grandmother did not have a job or a home, but that doesn't mean we were homeless and poor, because if you know the concept of familia, our family in any language makes a big sense, right? But we always had someplace to go, somewhere to do. She was always working with someone, and I hopped from place to place. And I remember those days, not vividly, but certainly a memory bank of walking on dusty roads, in and out of buses and trains. And all I remember, and this is an important thing for all of you, because this is who you are to folks, this grizzled hand that always held me tight, gave me confidence, gave me comfort. I never knew we were wandering around homeless, without a home and without a job. I just knew I was with my grandmother, and she always gave me this incredible amount of confidence and support. And her upbringing of me in those early years, those formative years, created such an indelible mark on who I am, beyond all the education that I've had. That human touch, again, I reemphasize that for all of you, that is such a critical piece, because that's what you remember. And to end that story to some degree, at the end of her life, she was here in the United States. She worked at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas as a housekeeper. So if you ever see me in a hotel and I have a little tear in my eye when I'm leaving, it's because I'm walking down and I'm seeing all the muchachas, all the ladies that work that, and it just brings this whole thing to me. And this was such a hardworking woman that when she retired at the ripe age of 88, and they had a retirement party, and I was invited, I was thinking it was her and her little ladies, right? We're gonna have a little thing. It was a big ballroom full of people, and I remember vividly the suits were there, because that's not who I normally would see. And the stories that you heard from the people that talked about her, never missed a day of work, was always ready to fill in, always with a smile, never said a bad word to anyone. All those are things that became my leadership traits, my mark, who I had part of. I wish I could be like her. And even more telling is after she retired, a few years later, she had some issues, medical issues. And when I went to see the doctor to fill in, he asked me, what type of pain medication is your grandmother on? And so she's not on any medication. Come on, that's impossible. It turns out that her left leg, because of severe arthritic condition, had fused together. And the pain of something like that, forget just the pain that exists, forget walking or working as she was. She had that issue for about 10 years of her life, never complained. So when I have a crappy day at work, whatever happens to me, I think of her and that remark. So we are all products of people we've met along the way. And I've had the good fortune of having lots of folks. And so she is the one that taught me so many things. And then back to the educational concept. Again, I finally came to the U.S. spot when I was 8 years old. Didn't speak a word of English. I started school, I think second or third grade. Learned the English, learned English quickly, like all the kids do. And then what was interesting is, over the course of my life, because I was the first to go to college, and you see this in your communities all the time, right? The concept of DEI and all the political BS that surrounds it, the foundational thing for something like this is a story just like mine. Because I was going to high school, I was doing fine, and school was school, played sports, chased girls, went surfing, which is, my son's back here, he did the same thing. Does the same thing. He's single, by the way. So if you guys have daughters, he's a very good-looking kid, too. Takes after his mother. The environment that you all manage, people, is the concept of education. Higher education is somewhat foreign. And we're ignorant of that because no one is there to teach us. And this is where Mrs. Duckworth comes in, yet another woman in my life. Mrs. Duckworth was a high school counselor. She's just a high school counselor. I was sneaking around between classes in the hallways, and I turned the corner, and there she was. And she said, "I'm looking for you." I'm like, I'm in trouble again. And she asked me a very simple question. It's like, "Hey, I haven't met you yet." It's like, "Yes, because I avoid you every chance I can." But she said, I was looking at the PSATs, this is back when I saw the scores. I hadn't noticed you on any of our sheets. Where are you thinking of going to college? She asked me. My answer, honest to God, I said, "What's a college?" And that, in that conversation, is I tell this to very large audiences. When you want to give crap to DEI, it's like, forget all that. Or how do I get engaged? How do I get involved? You have to understand there's a community, a huge community out there that just doesn't know. Without that intervention in that hallway, in that very moment, I would have graduated from high school, got a job. My dad was a union meat cutter. My mom was a stay-at-home. We all have the same story. 9 kids in my family. I'm chronologically the oldest, but there's something that makes me the youngest. You can ask me that later. That's a good story. And I would have never known to do anything like that because I had no idea. She helped me through the whole process, that whole Byzantine aspect of an application and money. She wrote checks for me. She taught me how to write the notes and what to say. And next thing you know, I'm applying to colleges and getting into all these different places. And that's how I went to college. My dad, my stepdad now, a lot of stories there, was not a particularly wise person. I wasn't his favorite since I wasn't his, as you can imagine if you know Latino men. When I left for college, on the day I was leaving, he wrote me a check for $140. And he said, one of the few endearing moments I had with him, he sort of put his arm around me and he handed me this check. He goes, "Mijo, I don't know where you're going. I don't know what you're doing, but hopefully this helps," right? $140. You heard the $90,000 before. I was thankful in a full ride trustee scholarship here at USC, but I had turned down all these other schools because I just didn't know. I went to a particular school that he may have mentioned that I got into as well out in Boston, and it was the most scary thing in my life. My dad is blue collar to the max, as they used to say. He had that silver keychain with all those keychains. I never understood what all those keys were. We had to go to, I was a scholarship kid there too, and we had to go to this black tie optional event in Harvard. And I'm walking around with this map, trying to figure out where we're going. I was a surfer. My hair was down to here. You guys don't live in SoCal, but I was very cool then. And I pulled it off really well. But for me, it's Southern California. You wore longer shorts when it was winter and a long sleeve shirt. And maybe you put shoes on, Vans versus your flip-flops. So we're walking around looking casual at best. My dad looked like he worked there with the keychain. And so we walk up to this thing, and there's this days in front of this room, and like they're looking at me, it's like, yes, can we help you? And I said, you know, you must be lost, said one of the ladies. I said, I'm sure we are, but can you help us? So I gave her the thing. So this little blush comes over her face, looks us up and down, and I swear to God, that's the first time I ever felt different. At that very moment, and then the second time I felt really different was when I walked into this room with my dad. And everybody's, of course, dressed to the T's. We're dressed like two rubes from the country. And my table is not at the back where I can just sit. My table's right up sort of near the front. We had to walk through that. It's the first time I learned the concept of reading the room, understanding who's around you, who's comfortable, who's not, and how you make someone comfortable. That is at the core of my leadership style. It's how we turned around United. It's how we turned around everything I've ever run, because I just care about people because people have cared about me. And that is such a critical aspect. So I won't tell you the whole story about that night, other than my dad, they try to put the napkin on his lap, and then he ordered Coors beer, which, if some of you remember way back in the day, Coors beer wasn't sold east of the Mississippi. So they said, no, and he's like, looks, what kind of place is this? It doesn't serve Coors. I don't know, Dad, let's go, though. So I did not go to that fine school. But I love telling that story when people from that school are here, because, no. Yes. Okay. So that's a little bit of my background. And again, the concept of who I am is someone that has those roots and background. And I've used all of that for a lot of critical things in my life. I've had some really very, very serious things happen in my life, both at work and personally. Suffered a major heart attack that should have killed me. Survived it. I had it 37 days when I took the job into United Airlines. For all of you from Chicago, you probably know this story because everybody knew this story. And then I was in a medically induced coma for a while, and then had to have a heart transplant a few weeks later. Importantly, 7 days after getting the heart transplant, I was back at work, back in the office, and of course I had to be careful with a lot of different things. But it's the concept of caring about other people and creating that level of connection. 37 days into the job, this happens. Our company was disengaged, disenfranchised, disillusioned, 100,000 employees, 80 different countries, massive organization who had had 8 CEOs in the previous 10 years. And so someone like me comes in. First, I'm outside of the environment of the industry. I worked in someplace else. So nobody knows who you are. But the right people knew, because in my last company, we had a lot of unions, and I worked with them, again, to bridge gaps, to solve issues. Not like we love to do today is one goes left, one goes right, and the only place we move is further left and right. We all in this room probably have strong views about how to bring people together, because that's what you have to do. That's what real people have to do. Real people that are in charge of real things, in order to get it done, you have to get to the middle. And we have forgotten that. But that is my style and approach. So my first instinct was to go on, for lack of a better term, has been dubbed the listening tour. And an axiom, when you write a book, by the way, you have to come up with axioms, because it just makes you feel more like an author. So one of them is listen and learn before you lead. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think from a general leadership perspective and the work that a lot of you do, it might be helpful in the way you do it, because this concept of listen and learn and lead makes sense, right? Listen, yes, I understand. Learn, and then lead. Well, first of all, they're in order, right? You got to listen first. And then the learn aspect is when you think you've listened, you think you've heard, then provide your learnings back to the people you heard it from to ratify that indeed this is what you said. Okay, thank you for all those thoughts. I heard you say this. No, that's not what I said, right? That iteration is not what people do. First of all, people don't listen really well. We say we listen. Whatever. It's so easy not to listen. There are 1,000 books on how to better listen. So that's one. Listen and learn, and then listen again is even tougher for people. And then the hardest thing for everyone, especially in the leadership area that all of you have, do that before you lead. Because everybody's expecting so much of us so quickly that we want to jump to it. It's like, I'm good, I've done this before, and like when I went to United, I had done it before. We had turned around my previous company significantly. So I'm all that, right? I can do this. Putting that aside, wanting to listen and learn from people is a critical thing. Now, so let's talk about each one of those real quickly. Listen. 8 CEOs in previous 10 years, new guy shows up, nobody knows who he is, where he's coming from, and he decides he's going to be out there, asking people what they think is wrong. First of all, that concept of a CEO telling the world, the investment world, that when asked, what are you going to do first? I said, you know what, I was going to say 60 to 90 days, but I could sense the tension in the room. I'm going to take 30 to 60 days, and I'm going to go out into the field and find out from the people that actually run the business every single day what has been going on with United, why it's so broken. And of course, the people that are hearing this, these are the investment community, are like, what the hell does that mean? Right? It's like, well, what's he going to do? What are they going to teach him, right? They're just these lowly, frontline people that, they just do what they do. They throw bags. By the way, that's an industry term for your luggage. We actually do throw your bags. Why people buy luggage that's tens of thousands of dollars and check it, I do not get. They must have an awful lot of money. But if you think about such a widespread organization, and it's been broken for so long, dubbed the friendly skies, which we had lost all of that from a reputation perspective, to go out there and actually want to listen to them made all the sense in the world to me. It made no sense to anyone else. And I think one of the reasons my story has been so I don't want to use the word captivating because that sounds very self-aggrandizing, is because good guys who really care about people actually do win. Our stock went flying. We've never had until recently with my successor, who's had a lot of success as well. The stock has never moved in an airline that quickly. The culture in a company has never turned around so quickly. The service level that you receive, and I hear this every single day I fly, when somebody walks up to me and just wants to thank me. And if you're flying United, for all of you, when you go back, when you talk to a flight attendant, if she's of my age, if she was when I was there, ask them if they knew Oscar, you watch what you see. Again, this is not patting myself on the back. My legacy to that company is that, well, step back. In my listening tour, one person said, this is so bad here that when I'm at a social function and somebody asks me where I work, I would rather say I'm unemployed, right? So how do you change a human's heart and mind from that to, I really want to be part of the friendly skies and moving it forward and working through that? So this concept of listen and learn before you lead had the impact on those people of actually feeling like they were part of the solution. I did not take every single person's viewpoint or opinion about what to fix. Fidel, you said this, how it's like, people have all these things, choose the things to do and not do. I never said any of that to them. I just listened. And the concept of listening was simple. I would walk up to someone, like all of you have lanyards. Everybody in our industry has lanyards, and you can wear whatever you want, to some degree. I remember the first person I approached, he had a Dallas Cowboy football lanyard. And I'm walking by the guy, and I said, I stopped, and I said, Cowboys? I hate the Cowboys. So this guy just stops in his tracks, doesn't know who I am. And it's like, fighting words, right? But all of a sudden, within a few minutes, he begins to figure out, I'm by myself, begins to figure out how, and then we began to engage in what? Just a simple human conversation, just normal. And then when I have an agenda, I want to know what's wrong with it. I want to hear people's viewpoints. But in order to do that, you have to build trust. And trust only travels at the speed of transparency. You have to give a little bit of yourself and put yourself in that way. Attacking somebody's football team is a big, courageous move. But this went on 100 times, and hundreds everywhere in little pockets, one-on-one, one-on-two. And what slowly began to build in the community, in this massive global organization, was this guy is different than the other guys. Now, I have to say, we have a very diverse, very global community. And so being Hispanic didn't help. Being able to talk the language a little bit didn't hurt. Didn't hurt. But again, the concept of this genuine connection with people at the lowest level is so critical. And I urge you to this concept of listen and learn before you lead. Seems so simple, but you can solve so many problems. I'll share one example, and then I want to get some questions. And again, another axiom is proof, not promise. So anybody can, politicians, yeah, we're going to solve everything, and then nothing really happens. In your conversation with a United person, if you ask them anything, you'll never be able to get somebody to say that Oscar didn't deliver on something he said he would. That's proof, not promise. So when I tell you these stories, a great story about this is we had a horrible union problem at the company. All of you understand unions, you know what that is. Our flight attendants. We're in contract negotiations with them right now, and it's the first time since I solved the last one, so they're at it again. But we had such a horrendous engagement and interaction with them that nobody was talking. And the woman that ran the union was very intelligent, very articulate, very telegenic, and she would get on TV, and she made us look like idiots, right? She's like, oh, we're just trying to do this, and then we would get on with our, we're trying to get efficiency and productivity. We looked like complete idiots. So we had a battle raging, and so this concept of listen and learn before you lead, again, that's an axiom I made up. It's almost instinctual. It's what my grandmother would have done, honestly. And so I asked her to come meet with me, and she wouldn't do it. Long story, but we finally get in the same room. She hates us. She hates management. Doesn't know me, but she hates me. And honestly, I don't know that I like her that much at this point because I've heard all the stuff she's saying. She's accusing me of things, and I was like, what the hell? I just got here. So I call into the room, and I don't know what made this happen. This is kind of like the Dallas Cowboy lanyard thing. When we sat down, she was, I said, hey, before we start, her name's Sarah. I said, Sarah, if you don't mind, I'd love to know how you got to be the head of the flight attendants union. What's the story behind it? Like, well, I don't know what that, I don't know why that's relevant or that, I said, it probably isn't, but I really would love to know. Well, I was a flight attendant, and then I was like, well, we all have stories, tell me. She goes on to tell a story when she was a young flight attendant, still learning the ropes, still not getting a lot of jobs, and you get stranded in a lot of places. They don't make a lot of money. And she was at a particular place and early in her career where she was at some station with zero money in her bank account, not knowing what she was going to spend that night, had no trip that night to get back home, so kind of stranded, and not the first time that it happened. So as she's sitting there in some back room of some airport, crying because it's so frustrating, she tells the story about somebody tapped her on the shoulder, another woman, and said, what's wrong? Tells her the story. This woman pulls out her purse, writes her, again, it's another story of a personal check, writes her a check for $500, hands it to her. It's like, here, take this, take care of yourself. You'll pay me back. I'm so-and-so. I'm head of the union here at the station. That is how Sarah Nelson became the person to lead these flight attendants. If you think about that story and how she got to that role, she cared about these people. She's lived this. She's trying to protect another young Sarah from doing that. She didn't say any of that, but asking that question, I got that sense. I felt that tug and emotion. And as she told the story further, and she teared up, remembering that story. And I said, that's a wonderful story. When we left, we hugged and shook hands on that, I'm going to solve this thing, this union contract. And we did. 3 months later, we still negotiated. I said, when you get close, call me, and I'll solve the rest of it. She hated the company, hated the union. If you buy my book, at the top of the acknowledgments is Sarah Nelson. First acknowledgement is Oscar Munoz saved United Airlines. This is the proof that this concept of human outreach, human engagement, caring, building trust with folks, this trust travels at the speed of transparency thing. You guys have to convince parents, single parents in a lot of places, not just the kids, that this concept of education, you're 8,000 kids, right? You can't, how do you take care of that many kids, right? It's daunting as hell. Well, you got to have some help from someone, and that help usually is at home. And my story is a perfect one. It's not that I didn't have help at home. They would have loved to have helped. They had no idea what that help was. So making people aware, giving them an option, and Fidel is so humble about the work that they do. You got to meet these friggin' kids. Oh my God, they blow you away. This cream of the cream, these 10,000 out of the 90,000 that they pick, oh my God. It's like, I would have never gone to college if I competed against those things. So listen, I want to be mindful of time. I know you've been here for a long time. I could talk about 1,000 other things, but any quick questions that you have, and again, I'll be at the reception tonight so we can talk more, but anything in that, there's a whole bunch of things that I missed there, but I wanted to make things as pertinent to the work that you do as much as I could in a short period of time.
As a nice, like you said, good guys can win. As a compassionate guy who has empathy, but a leader in a business industry that can be very sharky, how have you balanced continuing to maintain your character while also doing what you need to do for the people that you serve, being your employees?
The phrase that we came up with, and by the way, my co-author on my book is back there as well with the tie, Brian, and we've been together for a long period of time. If you ever need some brilliant writing, find him. We came up with a concept is that, it's you being principled, right, is your thing. It's like, how do you balance the cutthroat nature of business? You got to make tough business decisions. You got to negotiate with unions. You got to do all this kind of stuff. You've got competitors, but also keep this warm heart sort of thing. We came up with a concept. You can not only be profitable, but you can also be principled. And then added, actually, the more principled you are, the more profitable you can be. Because in our particular case, 100,000 people that worked for me in this space all became part of this turnaround story. And I didn't have to go and to tell them what they needed to do. They knew the reasons why we had to do it, and they believed in it. Your question is more direct. It's like, hey, we're not here talking about the business strategy and how we grew the network and our pricing mechanics and the way we've built systems out to be the leading, our app at United is the best. We did all that business, all that strategy, all that hard, difficult work, fought with Wall Street investors. I had a proxy battle trying to take me out and my board out. I went through all of that. And there's a side of me, as a side to all of us, right? Moms are the best. They're the sweetest until they ain't. And so you have to have that as well. I wouldn't be here talking to you if I had just done the wonderful listen and learn kind of thing. We grew an organization. Our stock went up 70, 80% over the course of time. Our metrics, our record, we're one of arguably two best airlines in the world now, where just a few years ago, we were one of the worst. So there's two sides of it. But what's amazing, if you are yourself, it's amazing how people learn. So this concept of listening, learning, me being out in the field, me caring, me solving big, huge union issues. I mean, these are billions of dollars of decisions, right? Giving someone an extra 10 cents an hour for doing this thing, when you talk 26,000, flight attendants over the course of 5 years, that shit adds up. And you have to live with it. So it's easy to say yes, but then you got to figure out something. So all of that has to be balanced, and that's what education teaches, this other side of thing. But the concept of knowing yourself, having your principles in place is a key thing. There was a horrible incident that happened when I was at United when that passenger was dragged and beaten. You guys, I don't know if anybody didn't see the video. I'm never shy about talking about it because, again, we've dubbed that, it's never too late to do the right thing. And the story behind that is, I won't go through the whole thing because of time, but I was being trained before we went on Good Morning America and finds of tens of millions of people. They just can't wait to see a CEO under the headlights, right? Like, blah, 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 and they're going to dice them. And so I'm being prepped because the story there was no United employee involved in any of that. It really, truly wasn't us. And when you try to say that publicly, no one cares. Right? Like, no, I want to blame somebody. You're the guy. And so, and again, we didn't handle it well necessarily. But the proof point for me was trained to how to divert, how to, in essence, blame somebody else, how to tell the real story concisely so everybody understands that it's not United. This is back to your question, how do you balance those sides? I could have done that, and I probably would have pulled it off to some degree, I don't know. But that night, as I was getting ready, in the middle of the night, as I thought about this, went to the restroom, came back, and sort of fell on my knees and looked up, not because I'm necessarily a pious person, don't think that. Lincoln said it best in his books. He said, I kneeled and looked up because there was nowhere else to look. And I kind of felt that lonely, lonely at the top sort of thing. And what came to me, back to this concept of knowing who you are and being principled about it, my grandmother, Mama Safina, the opening conversation I had, I literally, and it sounds corny, but like, something came, I was like, what would she do? She never blamed anyone. She never diverted. She never said anything. So I didn't exactly know what I was going to say when I got on TV the next morning, but it wasn't going to be what they've taught me to do. So when asked the question, I answered it, and then I said the magic words that I remember to this day, because they're my words, not somebody else. I said, I let the policies and procedures of running an airline get in the way of doing what's right for another human being. And that should never happen, and it will never happen again on my watch. Period. Funny part. Her ear, the person interviewing me, you can just hear it going off because it's like, wait. They're waiting for me to say, well, blah, 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 this and this. And so they're waiting for all these follow-up questions so they can kind of catch me and burn me. The louder gasp was my team behind me. My comms and legal team was like, he's not supposed to say that. But it's never too late to do the right thing. And the buck has to stop somewhere, and it was with me, so I took it personally. And what happened, she tried to ask a couple more questions, but it's like, I just said, you're right, it's my fault. And we're never going to let it happen again, and here's what we're going to do. And so once you start repeating that, the news cycle fans off quickly. My biggest detractors of that commentary were not anywhere outside because they had nothing to say. It's like, what did he do? Well, he admitted it, and he said he was wrong, it's not going to happen, right? It's like, there's no more story there. My own team was upset. It's like, Oscar, why did you take the blame for something we didn't do? So I went around on a worldwide retribution tour, I called it, apologizing to everybody, but explaining to this how this concept of doing the right thing is important. Nobody was going to believe us. Let's get this behind us. I got another point of proof, not promise, and I end with that. For the 3 months following that incident, we had been improving our operational metrics. We've been doing all this. In those subsequent 3 months, the people of United, every single one of those folks that work in so many different places and so many different roles, took it upon themselves to do such a great job that we led all operational metrics for 3 months in a row. We hadn't even come close to doing that. That's, when somebody says they got your back, that was a clear example of that. So that's the story to share. Any other thoughts, questions real quick before we move? Michael, how are we doing on time?
Any questions?
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 or 3?
Sure, whatever you guys want.
At the beginning, you were talking about how when you were taking over, just your leadership team was a little bit fragmented, where some of them didn't like that you were going out and to listen and lead, and everyone had their own opinions. And so, how do you bring an executive team together when it is so fragmented?
Well, first of all, the magic of being out and about is even the operational experts, because they're not out there very often, you get much more contemporary information than they do, right? It's like somebody says, well, you can't do that because of this, this, and this. And I'll say, I was just out in LA and I was talking to so-and-so, and we were talking about this, and he said he'll wish they could do that more. Right, so I had insight information. They knew I was closer to some of the information source, which led them in turn to say, you know what, I better get out there in front of Oscar or right behind Oscar to see what they think, because now he knows maybe more than I do. So there was a leading by example, not in your face, like you're wrong. It was just this concept of leading by example, being out there forced everyone to do the same thing. So that was one start. The second one to your question, and this is something you can apply in your organizations, and it is stupid simple. I have some of the best leaders in the industry. They really were. I mean, it's just they weren't rowing in the same direction. They all thought that the right thing to do was what they thought, so they were going this way and that way and that way. None of it was going towards this North Star, right? That was my job. By the way, the North Star is Polaris, if you fly United, Polaris class, that's how all that story came about. So it's all, yes, it's all tied together. So what I started doing on Monday mornings from 9 to 2, we had because again, you're the boss, Oscar. You can just, your question is, how do you get them to come together? Well, you tell them, you come together or I'm going to fire you, right? Right? That's an easy way. There's a lot of ways. You read a lot about that today, about how some people lead. And more power to them, that's their way. The durable aspect of leadership is that leadership is never about you, but about the people you lead. And anytime you start thinking you're more important than everyone, or your views are more important. So the way I did it was just to have, again, stupid simple. We had a Monday morning staff meeting. The agenda was simple. Each one of my executive leaders, my direct reports that ran big, huge organizations, were to come into the room and we would have a round table, meaning every single person would stand up or sit down, whatever, and just report out to the rest of the team what they were up to that day, that week, that month, that year, whatever it was. And they were all confused, like, what are we supposed to say? The HR person, the first day, he showed up and he had like 18 pages. And after 20 minutes, I stopped and was like, okay, we don't need that much detail. But what was interesting about that, to your question, is initially it's like, well, how is this valuable? Like the operational guy was one of the most, like I have a business to run. I have 1,400 planes in the air at any point in time, and I've got the safety of, all these people. He's a very involved guy, and why do I have to sit around and, listen to the HR guy do this or whatever? What quickly began to form is with a little gentle prodding, like tell me more or tell me less, kind of like with Sarah Nelson, right? You have to just kind of gently probe. Or I would know things that would do. It's like, well, Greg, you didn't talk about this thing you're doing in LA. Oh yeah, we're doing that in LA. Classic example is one of the network design folks, Where We Fly, is all excited, along with the marketing people, about we're going to start a flight. We're looking at starting flights into this country on this thing. The operations guy who didn't care about any of this stuff, like nobody here could possibly say anything important that would affect me because I run this business, right? That's his mantra. All of a sudden he perks up, he says, wait, what? You're doing what? Like, yeah, no, it's exciting, we're going to fly to, I think it was New Zealand. And then he gets engaged. He says, well, how the hell are you going to do that? What plane are you going to use out of which airport at what time? All the logistics that have to fall into place. You don't just start a plane, right? The pricing people are next door. It's like, well, wait a second, how are we flying? Nobody knew. It's the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. I didn't have to tell them that. All of a sudden, this round table became the most critical thing because you needed to bring it. You need to bring what's going on. And you could never come to me and say, Mary didn't support me or whatever, because in that room, it was expected of you as a leader to bring all the stuff that's going on and get that debate. And we had some hellacious debate. But when you walked out of that room, nobody could say they did not know what was going on in someone else's area. And we built that into so many people, the way we hired people into key roles. It used to be that the only way you got to a certain role at United was who you knew, right? Like, well, we just instituted a very simple practice that no one gets elevated to what's called managing director level without the express full approval of this executive team. And if I want to bring Mary into this role, I introduce Mary as a concept on paper to the executive team, and then everybody gets to interview her. And we all talk about her after everybody's met her. And if we all agree that she should be elevated, she should be. A little clumsy, a little cumbersome maybe, but this concept of you only get ahead by the people you know just got shot down, right? It's like, oh, so she convinced 12 people have, this close relationship with her, which you couldn't do that. So this concept of getting people to talk about what they're doing and get other, that's the way we solved it. I didn't force it, I just got them to understand more of that. So, all right, one more question. Yes, sir, back there. Oh, I can't tell. Oh, I'm sorry, it's like, I cannot see anything.
So for someone, like I'm a teacher, and so oftentimes teachers feel as if in our school districts, we don't have a lot of say-so or input on things that especially affect us. So
Well, that sounds so familiar.
yeah, that's why I want to ask this question is because for your, I don't want to call myself low level, so I'll call myself a foundational person, right? Because we're at the front lines, we're the baseline of education. For those of us that are in the front line that want to do more advocacy, because most of the decisions that are being made from people that haven't been in the classroom in years, how can we elevate or advocate to those that are higher up above us on the district, I guess, pay scale, you would say?
So in this room, I think you have various grades of all of this, right? And so I hope those of you that are in the higher levels, above foundational, are listening to that. This concept of listen and learn. What you can do is obviously make your points clear, be ready with your points, try not to be too emotional about them, because you have to understand that leaders have a lot to do. And sometimes they do it well, sometimes they don't, but we always think we're so busy that we can't pay attention. So you have to make it easy for people. So from your perspective, where you're thinking, be direct, be concise, and be clear, and not emotional. For all of you listening to that, friggin' listen to it. I mean, and you got to build that bond, because you cannot do it by yourself. And the people at the leadership, you're gonna go and do all these things, not knowing that there's actually really good input if you care to listen to it. And when you build that culture, you don't have questions like that, because the advocacy comes naturally. And it's hard to do, but once you build that culture, the hardest part of my job, honestly, was once we built this thing of communication and listening, was that I had to do it all the time. I mean, I'm coming from 4 days. I've been in Wall Street or DC, and really important stuff because I'm the CEO, right? And I'm coming back into the Chicago airport, and it's 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm dusted. I am tired. It's like, and then as I'm walking down the terminal, somebody will walk outside of one of the break rooms, and they'll see me, and you see it's like, it's Oscar. And again, please, this is not self-aggrandizing. I know it sounds that it's not, but that's the kind of culture we built. Here's what you have to do as a leader. You're tired, you've done a lot. I'm given at the office all damn week. And this person coming out, you have to remember that's the first time they're seeing you, maybe the last time. And if you just walk away from them, that's what they're gonna remember. So you sit there and you're like, great, hi, how's it going, right? And it doesn't take a long time. It's the thing we do with our children, right? It's so easy. I always heard this from a guy named Roberto Goizueta, who used to run Coca-Cola, and I was his chief of staff. And he taught me all these wonderful little things, like when you come home from work, while you're busy and you're an important person and all that, you have to understand everyone in your household has also got their own life, their own importance. And if you teach them when you come home that you're to be left alone, as you get older in life, that becomes something that's embedded in their brain. No, dad's important or mom's important, and we shouldn't. And when you begin that separation, as opposed to, he goes, just come home. Just literally touch every single person in whatever way you do, and give them a kid comes in and like, how was your day? And they run off, right? You yell to your spouse, it's like, hey, I'm home. It's like, oh, great. How was your day? Great. But it's that level of interaction, that caring, that genuine connection makes so much. Please, please keep that in mind in all your interactions, and keep your advocacy up. You people that above it, listen to them. We have a lot of leaders that are just not very good. And ooh. I feel the cancel. But that human connection, it's like, I think you're getting the point of this. All of you do what you do because you're incredible, wonderful people, and you do care about folks. That's the important part. And a teacher, my God, it is foundational, but teachers and nurses to me are, when I was sick in the middle of the night, I think nurses literally saved my life emotionally. Physically as well, but the connection that they have to have with you and the way they keep you in your darkest moments, because I don't know if you've ever been in the hospital. It's like overnight, when it starts getting dark, for me, it was the worst time. And I was there for a long time in that stupid hospital. But that caring is an important part of you. And so keep that in what you do. And again, remember that these kids need to be taught. And just a quick commercial message for Michael and his team. The more I hear about this Netflix of education and the curriculum they built and how critical important, so many schools in your funding, right? You want to teach your kids better. Those 8,000, right? There's core classes that they can't get because of whatever. There's advanced placement classes that they can't get because it's not available. The ability to have this available to them that's accredited and accrues to them, I just think that's such a meaningful impact on their lives because, as you know, learning and knowing all these things is such an important part. So I'll leave it at that because I'm running way over time. I'll be at the event tonight, so love to share a beer or drink or water with you. But more importantly, I'll just end where I started or where Fidel started as well. Thank you so much for what you do. Whatever you think, whatever people tell you, just screw them, because what you do for our children is so critically important. And Michael, to you and your team, how you're helping them, that's even more critical. And Fidel, you know, the work that you do, the money he's raised and the way philanthropies are known for always raising money, they're always behind. This man with his finance background, they've made that place hum like unbelievable. And I knew the organization beforehand, so I have that vantage point, so it's terrific. So thank you all for having me. We'll see you guys at the reception.